Welcome back to the Afterword, a conversation about the future of words. We're glad to have Janice Kaplan and Beth Sammons here with us. We are talking about words and stories related to gratitude and how the practice of gratitude can change our mindsets. So it's not possible to have a podcast now and not ask the COVID question. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I turn a lot of podcasts into blogs, and every episode, every show, we got to talk about the pandemic and how it's done something else. So let's talk about that. The global pandemic has put a damper on many of us, and it's impacted how we navigate life, how we deal with current events, how we handle stress. The news and social media have highlighted mental health during this season. How does gratitude change our brain? How can it help us unravel those patterns of anxiety and depression and negativity that we've seen, we've observed, and we've talked about?
Well, this is Janice. I think that gratitude actually had a resurgence during the pandemic. I was sort of surprised to see that, but especially early on, I was getting calls from all over of people asking me to give gratitude talks, or obviously Zoom talks early on, because I think people started to realize that it was a shocking situation. People were feeling helpless. They were, as you said, depressed or feeling that there was nothing that they could do. And it was a great time to turn inward and to see how you could make your own situation better. And so I think in a very ironic way, the pandemic helped a lot of people to realize that they should appreciate the things that they had. And, comparison always plays a role in our lives. And at the beginning, when people were just so shocked by the lockdowns, by the things that they didn't have, by the deprivations they were feeling, whenever I spoke to people, they would always talk about that. And then there would always be the hesitation. And then of course, I have it so much better than others. I'm not sick. People in my family aren't sick. I haven't died. And so we had that very dramatic negative to look at and to see the gratitude that we had for not falling into that. I think so often when we compare ourselves to people who have things better than us, and we feel that we're falling short. And so I think the pandemic did help a lot of people to be able to see the positive and know that they needed to be able to see the positive to go on.
I would certainly agree that was my experience. What about you, Beth?
I agree exactly with what Janice is saying, that instead of looking at people who have more than us, I think we switched our mindsets to say, oh, wow, that could have happened to my family, or I'm so lucky. I was working with the students at a food bank, and there were 500 cars coming through in a neighborhood where these students' families probably could be recipients of this. And I just remember them and some of their parents going, oh, we're so lucky. Wow, we're so lucky. And I know myself, seen, there's been some very sad things that have happened with people that that have not made it. But I think I've tried to use this time, and I think many people around me is, well, let's pivot. And we're so lucky we have a book club that can still keep us connected and do it on Zoom. And just looking at like the things that you do have instead of what you don't have, I think became very real during this crisis.
Oh, that is so true. I do appreciate the idea of comparison, but I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here because, I think I will speak for myself. I do believe that gratitude is much more than just looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. And it is vital we do not live in denial of our situations or minimize the pain in life. But there are times when we get pushback about demonstrating gratitude. Someone gets irritated because we're too positive, or, I can hear some of the backstories of some of my students that were very upset with tasks and things like that, and just being very angry about having to do and not seeing any positives. So what can you do to help be balanced? Definitely, accept and see the difficulty in life, but also balance that out with that place of gratitude. So what do you think, Mary Beth? I'm going to start with you first.
Yeah, there's a fine line. I mean, you can't walk around like Pollyanna being, oh, let's all cheer,
Right.
So you have to be authentic, I think, is the number one thing. Like it has to come from a place in your heart and your soul, and you have to really look for things that are, you can't say platitudes, you have to say things that are really real. Or I'm grateful for your friendship through this. It was so great to be able to talk to you on the phone every week and stay connected. Or I'm grateful. Thank you for dropping off, food at my house. Or, they have to be real, and they can't be like, I'm so happy I'm alive. I can, and making things up, and, so I think authenticity is the real key to it.
Okay. Very good. Janice, help us out.
No, I like that idea of authenticity, but I'm also amused that you brought up the idea of rose-colored glasses, because it's something that I hear all the time, that whenever I'm with a group and we talk about gratitude, there's bound to be somebody in the questions and answers who at the end stands up and says, well, a lot of people say that I'm negative, but I think that I'm seeing the world as it is, and all of you are just seeing it through rose-colored glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first thing is, that there's no way you're ever going to be able to change that person's opinion. But the other idea is that I always find it very amusing that some people believe that seeing the world negatively is actual and real, whereas seeing it positively is what's fake and what's rose-colored glasses. And I'm not sure where we get that from. I don't know. Was it from Van Gogh that to be a great artist, or you have to cut off your ear, that you have to suffer, that old myth of suffering? Well, if we look at the truth, most of the people who were great artists who have done work did not do it from a state of depression, and did not do it from a state of negativity. So I think it's really important to get over that idea that somehow being negative is more sophisticated, more urbane, more upscale than being positive, and realizing that no, positivity is really a great way to move forward. It's a great way to succeed. It's a great way to get people in the world to listen to you and to follow you too.
That is so good. I remember having a mentor, and she would always say, Amy, if I was in your situation, I would feel that way too. But I also know, and then she would give me something else to think about too. So I appreciate the both and of, you have to acknowledge the pain, the difficulty in every situation, but the perspective and the authentic gratitude, those are all so good. Thank you.
Well, we've talked about the mental health benefits of gratitude. We've talked about some of the relational benefits, even the workplace benefits of gratitude. Are there physical benefits to gratitude? Are we healthier because we're grateful? What do you think, Mary Beth? You're taking this.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of studies. Maybe Janice's study alludes to this, but there are physical benefits that, it can fight depression. It can fight some. It can make you healthier for some, immune diseases. It makes you sharper. Just think, you think of depression like slumped over and so despondent. And when you're seeing things through the lens of gratitude, it kind of takes away, it shifts your brain. And so there are scientific studies that show that it can make a difference in your health too.
Right. And I agree with Mary Beth. And those scientific studies are actually sort of overwhelming. I mean, I think we all know that there are mind-body connections at this point. We understand what that is. But Mary Beth, I'm sure you had the same experience in doing your research, that I was just stunned by how extensive they are. And you mentioned some of the key elements, how it affects the immune system, how it affects depression, how it lowers stress, helps you sleep better, decreases blood pressure. There are actually very good scientific studies on all of those. And depression, which of course is a key issue right now. I had interviewed a psychiatrist at Mass General Hospital back when I was writing the book, and he is somebody who treats severely depressed and suicidal patients inpatient. And he said that he has found, and in studies that he has done, he found that writing a letter of gratitude had as big effect on some of these severely depressed and suicidal patients as almost any other treatment that he could provide them. And obviously that includes a large arsenal of drugs and other therapies. And that's pretty stunning. And writing a letter of gratitude, of course, is not such a big deal. It's thinking of somebody from your past, whether a first teacher or a mentor or a religious leader who did something for you that meant something to you, and actually sitting down and writing a letter to that person, just a few paragraphs, but very specifically outlining what they did and why it meant something to you and how important it was. And as the psychiatrist explained to me, when you do that, you think you're thanking somebody else, and indeed you are, but you're also giving yourself such a great gift. You're taking the time to change your perspective. You're taking the time to realize that you are a person who somebody has done something nice for, and who is therefore worthy of that. And so many other things like that start to get unpacked that can affect very dramatically how you feel, your levels of depression, and can last for quite some time afterwards. So yes, I think the physical benefits of gratitude reach far deeper than we could imagine.
That is so good. One of the things that anyone who has children knows that sometimes you have one child, or even as a teacher, you have some kids that just seem to be more happy. And so a research study done in 2007 said that genetics contributes to 50% of our happiness, such as our personalities. Intentional activity or learned practices explains about 40% of our happiness, and environmental circumstances about 10% of an explanation for why we're happy. So how does the practice of gratitude help shift genetic and environmental causes to balance us? What do you think, Janice?
Well, I think whatever the actual percentages are, we know that there is some percentage, whether it's a big one or a small one, that we do control how we feel. And so whatever that percentage is, you better take advantage of it, right? And you better go ahead and make the best that you possibly can with that, because it can change how you feel. One funny story, there's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania named Martin Seligman, who I'm sure Mary Beth has also spoken to. Also, he's known as the father of positive psychology and has done more work in that field than probably anybody else. And when I've spoken to him many, many times about many different subjects, and one of the times I was speaking to him, we were talking just about that. And he was saying that, everybody assumes that he is just a very positive guy. And he said he's not. His baseline is negative. And he said, I woke up this morning and I thought, as I always do, he's an older guy now. He thought, I'm way past my prime and nobody's interested in me anymore. And he said, I actually had to stop and make myself think, well, Janice is calling me this morning and we're doing an interview, so she's interested. And I do have that article in the journal that's coming out, so they're interested. And okay, I guess I'm still okay. But that he actually has to talk himself into being positive and grateful and appreciative just about every day. And we laughed about that, but I think it's true for all of us that whatever your natural baseline is, I'm not so sure there even is such a thing, because the power of what you decide to do, the power of how you decide to think about things is going to change that. And all of a sudden you're going to discover that that so-called natural baseline is a little bit different than you really thought.
That's so good. So the Charles Schulz Peanuts comic where Lucy is tipping Linus over so that the bad part of his heart is, draining into the good part of his heart is draining into the bad part isn't really necessarily helpful, huh? What do you think, Mary Beth?
I agree with Janice. I think that's very true. It's all how our perception of things, and trying, I think in psychology, they try to help you with, your distortions or your perceptions. And gratitude is one way that I think, that you can switch that around. And so I don't wake up every morning going, oh yeah, wow, this is a great day, but I have to make myself look at even, in hard things, look at what the good or what that good of that person might be. One exercise that we did in this program that I'm in, it's based on a poem, and forgive me, I don't know the poet's name, but it starts with, this is what I wish I could tell you. And it's a letter, a letter in your journal probably to someone who is challenging and makes your life difficult, and you want to repair the relationship. It's making you depressed or whatever. And it was, these are the things that I see in you that why I love you and why you're special and why I'm grateful for you, which is really hard to do if it's something that's not, in that bringing you joy and happiness. And so, and you can also use this exercise for somebody who is doing that to remind you of, as parents, you forget like, oh, I really love my son because he does this and this and this because you're so busy. So to sit down and not necessarily write it to the person, but this is what I wish I could tell you. And it's based on what you see the good in them and the gratefulness you have for that person, no matter what the circumstances.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you all so much.
We have one last question for you before you go. What's a metaphor to help us understand gratitude better? Janice, do you have something?
Well, rather than a metaphor, I was thinking of a lovely line from the Roman philosopher Seneca, who said, "Things that were hard to bear are sweet to remember." And I like that as a way of reminding us that our minds are able to turn around difficult experiences and to find the good in them. And we all have things that are hard to bear, but looking for that sweetness, knowing that when we look back, we might be able to experience sweetness more than we do in the moment sometimes. But that allows us to say, well, maybe I should try to see that sweetness, that goodness right now, rather than waiting for it to only be in the rearview mirror. And that will help you to be happier in the long run.
Thank you. Mary Beth, do you have a metaphor for us?
I don't really have a metaphor, but I think this is, I hate to end on this note, but it's one way to switch around, when we go to the place where we're not grateful, to remember this Rick Hansen, the psychologist, says this. He says, the mind is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. So we have to learn to just flip that and have our minds be Velcro that clings on to the positive experiences and lets go and washes away the negative ones so that we can be grateful for what we have in our lives.
Those are some incredible metaphors. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
Janice, before we go, where can folks learn more about you, your work, your books, and connect with you?
Probably the easiest place is my website, which is just www.janicekaplan.com. And there's a place on that website to send comments, talk about some of my other books. And I would love to hear from your listeners and always connect.
Thank you. Mary Beth, how can listeners connect with you, learn more about what you're doing?
Very similar. I have a website, www.marybeth, Marybeth, Sammons, SAMMONS.com. And there's also contact information on there as well. So I would love to hear from people, and always looking for new ways that people bring gratitude into their lives.
This has been a great conversation, and I appreciate both of you. Just want to say again, it's JaniceKaplan.com and MaryBethSammons.com, right?
Yes.
All right. Folks can join us again next week. Amy and I will reflect on 2021 and all the things we've learned this year. And we'll be sharing some of the best of the Afterword podcast this year.
It's hard to believe, Holland, that this is the end of our third season. And so all of you who've been with us and joining us here at the Afterword table, we want to thank you. We are so grateful for you and the feedback we get as we have done this podcast. Please become a subscriber to the Afterword podcast. It does help us keep the conversation going. And as always, you are welcome at our table.